Have you ever sat in traffic, staring at the endless red lights ahead, and wondered, is this it? Have you ever watched the minutes of your lunch break slip away like grains of sand, feeling like a prisoner granted temporary leave, only to return to the fluorescent-lit cell of your desk? Have you ever scrolled through social media on your third coffee break, watching strangers hike through jungles, paint murals on sun-drenched balconies, or simply breathe and thought, when did I stop living and start surviving? We've been told this is normal, that exhaustion is noble, that weekends are a reward, that ambition is climbing a ladder you didn't build toward, a view you may never see. But what if none of this is normal? What if what we call life is actually a very well-dressed trap? What if the 9-to-5 grind, the daily commute, the polite emails, the productivity hacks, the mid-year performance reviews, and the Sunday night dread are not necessities of modern civilization, but symptoms of a mass delusion? We're told from childhood that success is a job title, that fulfillment is a paycheck, that safety is owning a house and filling it with things you barely have time to enjoy. We're taught to compete, to conform, to consume, to silence the ache inside us with promotions and possessions. But deep down, you feel it, that quiet revolt, that tiny flicker of rage when you realize most of your waking life belongs to someone else, that suffocating sense of dissonance when your soul whispers that this cannot be all there is, and yet you silence it because rent is due. You were not born to be a cog in someone else's machine. You were not born to spend your most vital years hunched over keyboards, writing reports that vanish into digital dust. You are not born to earn just enough to stay alive, but never enough to feel free. So why does this feel like the only option? Why does society reward conformity but punish authenticity? Why does choosing meaning over money feel like failure? Why does your worth feel tied to your productivity and your identity to your LinkedIn profile? Could it be that the system was never designed for you to thrive, only to function? That the structure you were born into was built not to liberate you, but to tame you? And if that's true, who benefits from your exhaustion? Who profits from your quiet desperation? If your soul is screaming that there's more to life than this, that maybe you were meant for something deeper, freer, more alive, what would happen if you stopped ignoring it? What if the prison you live in doesn't have bars, but paychecks, subscriptions, and polite expectations? What if waking up to reality means daring to walk away from it? Not just in fantasy, but in action? We are going to dig deep, past the slogans and paychecks, past the self-help books and motivational posters, past the illusion of choice. Because the question isn't whether this life is killing you. The real question is, what part of you still believes you have no other choice? Let's go there. The greatest trick society ever pulled was convincing you that toil is virtue and stillness is laziness. You didn't choose this system. You were born into it. From the moment you could speak, you were asked, what do you want to be when you grow up? Not, who are you? Not, what makes your eyes light up? But what will you produce? How will you serve the machine? By the time you were old enough to feel the dull ache of conformity, it was already too late. You had homework, not freedom. Performance reviews, not poetry. Your days were scheduled, your curiosity tamed. And beneath it all, one belief was planted and watered until it took root in your bones. You must earn your right to exist. Arthur Schopenhauer saw it clearly. To him, life was suffering a blind striving of the will, endlessly desiring, never fulfilled. But what modern life does is even more cunning. It doesn't just contain suffering, it packages it. It sells it back to you as a career. It gives you goals that were never yours. It turns your longing for meaning into a race for relevance. And so you chase. You chase promotions, pay raises, polite applause. You chase status symbols that mask spiritual starvation. You chase dreams that don't nourish your soul, but pacify your anxiety just enough to keep going. But is this life? Friedrich Nietzsche warned us about this trap. He called it slave morality, the moral code of the obedient, the timid, the ones who repress their will to power in order to be accepted. Modern work culture thrives on this. It rewards passivity. It praises those who endure soul-numbing repetition without complaint. It scorns rebellion as laziness, nonconformity as threat. But Nietzsche asked, what if suffering could be transformed, not into profit, but into power? What if you were not meant to obey, but to create? And here lies the deeper wound. Work has become the modern god. It promises salvation through sacrifice. You bleed your time, your youth, your health for a vague redemption that never arrives. Albert Camus saw the absurdity in this. In the myth of Sisyphus, he described a man condemned to push a boulder uphill forever, only to watch it roll back down. That is modern life, a cycle of exhaustion without climax. Emails answered, bills paid, groceries bought only to do it all again tomorrow. Camus didn't say, quit. He said, become conscious. See the absurdity for what it is. And then rebel, not with violence, but with clarity. Because here's the bitter truth. This isn't just about money. It's about meaning. And meaning has been outsourced. You no longer ask, what do I love? You ask, what will pay the rent? You don't ask, what makes me come alive? You ask, what's in demand? And yet, even with a full-time job, you feel empty. Even with a roof over your head, you feel homeless inside yourself. Even with food in your fridge, you feel starved for something real. This is not your fault. This is a system built to keep you busy enough to not revolt, but not still enough to wake up. A system that keeps you anxious, dependent, and distracted, so you'll never ask the one question that burns beneath it all. What if my life is not mine? And if it isn't, then who does it belong to? What this life costs you, without you even noticing at first, it just feels like fatigue. You tell yourself it's normal. Everyone's tired. Everyone's stressed. But the truth is, there's a difference between being tired and being drained of meaning. You wake up one day and realize you haven't truly felt anything in months. Not wonder, not joy, not fire. You laugh politely. You answer texts. You keep your head above water. But something vital inside you is quiet, not dead, just sedated. And that's no accident. A life built on survival suppresses the very qualities that make you human. Curiosity, passion, play, stillness, mystery, depth. You become efficient, but not awake. Capable, but not creative. Functional, but not fulfilled. And the most haunting part? You stop noticing. Because the system doesn't just steal your time, it rewires your mind. You begin to identify with the grind. You say things like, I'm a lawyer, I'm in tech, I'm climbing the ladder, not realizing that these are roles, not selves. You mistake your schedule for your soul. Your mind becomes colonized by deadlines, performance metrics, quarterly targets, until the only language you speak is one of utility. What can I get done? How can I optimize myself? But you are not a machine. You are not designed for endless output. And yet, you measure your worth in productivity, believing the more you do, the more you are. This is the tragedy of our time. The most essential parts of the human experience have no market value. Wonder doesn't pay rent. Rest doesn't earn commission. Presence doesn't win promotions. And so, we abandon them. But the consequences are everywhere. We see them in rising anxiety, in burnout disguised as ambition, in the eerie silence of dinner tables where no one speaks without a screen, in the faces of young people who already feel old, in the eyes of elders who look back and wonder what they ever really lived for. We medicate what we cannot confront. We scroll instead of feel. We binge instead of breathe. We chase freedom through consumption, and yet everything we own ends up owning us. It's not that we don't have time. It's that the system has stolen our capacity to value it. And here's the most dangerous result. You forget how to dream. Not just goals, not just plans, but wild, burning dreams, the kind that keep you up at night and make your heart race with terror and awe. Instead, you settle. You buy comfort instead of freedom. You seek stability instead of growth. You fear risk more than regret. And somewhere deep inside, you know you were meant for more. Not in the egoic sense of being great or successful, but in the quiet knowing that your life could be yours. That you could live from the inside out, not from paycheck to paycheck. But the longer you wait, the harder it is to hear that voice. The longer you play the role, the more it becomes your skin. And eventually, you forget it's a mask. The unseen consequence of a life built on work is not just lost time, it's lost self. A quiet erasure, a slow vanishing. Not in some tragic collapse, but in small, polite, everyday compliance. And when enough people forget themselves, you don't just lose individuals. You lose culture. You lose truth. You lose the fire that keeps civilization human. So ask yourself, how much of your soul have you traded for a sense of safety? And was it ever truly safe? The first rebellion doesn't begin with quitting your job or running off to the mountains. It begins in silence. In the still, electric moment when you finally say, enough, not out loud, not with fanfare, but deep within you, a rupture in the machinery, a refusal so primal it echoes like thunder through your nervous system. This is not the sound of burnout. It's the sound of awakening. You realize you've been playing a game you never agreed to, living by rules designed by those who profit from your exhaustion. And suddenly, you stop moving. And that's where the real power begins. Because to rebel in a system that worships productivity is to reclaim your attention. To no longer offer your soul as tribute to endless achievement. Friedrich Nietzsche wrote of the Bermensch, the one who creates their own values in the ruins of false gods. And this is your task, to tear down the false god of laborious purpose, to redefine what it means to be alive. But don't confuse rebellion with impulsivity. You don't need to destroy everything. You need to see clearly, to recognize that your time is not neutral, that every hour you sell without meaning is a silent betrayal, and every yes you give out of fear is another thread in your invisible chain. So what does rebellion look like? Sometimes it's as small as pausing before saying yes. Other times it's as massive as walking away from a career that once defined you. It can mean choosing slowness over speed, depth over noise, creativity over compliance. It means redefining success, not as money or titles, but as inner sovereignty. It means asking dangerous questions. What would I do if money weren't a leash? What would I create if I weren't afraid of being judged? Who would I be if I stopped trying to be useful? Camus once said that the only real philosophical question is whether or not to continue living. But maybe the deeper question is, what kind of life is worth continuing? You break free not by escaping society, but by no longer being owned by it, by no longer internalizing its voice as your own. You stop chasing validation. You stop playing roles. You begin to live with an integrity so raw, it scares people. Not because you're aggressive, but because you're free. And nothing is more threatening to a system built on fear than someone who no longer needs approval. Arthur Schopenhauer, despite his grim worldview, knew this truth, that liberation begins not in the world, but in the will. When you cease to want what others tell you to want, when you stop desiring what culture calls success, you become dangerous. Because now, you are not predictable. You are not programmable. You are alive. You don't need to move to the forest. You don't need to delete all your apps and live in a van. You just need to wake up inside your own life, to see your choices as yours again, to live on purpose, not on autopilot. The rebellion isn't loud. It's not glamorous. It's not always fun, but it is sacred. It is the moment you return to yourself. And when you do, when you no longer serve out of fear or chase out of emptiness, you begin to create something no system can replicate, a life built on truth. Imagine this. One day, long after the noise has quieted, after the chase has worn thin, after the last email has been answered and the final invoice paid, you sit alone, no audience, no calendar, no expectations. And in that stillness, you hear it. The faint but unmistakable sound of your own self, returning. Not the version the world applauded, not the role you played so well you almost forgot it was a costume, but the real you, the one that never needed to be earned or branded or approved. And in that moment, it hits you, you are never broken. You were just buried beneath deadlines and diagnoses, beneath shame and structure, beneath be realistic, play it safe, do the responsible thing. Beneath 1,000 tiny betrayals of the soul, you are always whole. The ultimate truth is not that work is evil, not that money is poison, not that success is a lie. The ultimate truth is that you are never meant to live on someone else's terms. You are not born to obey. You are not born to shrink. You are not born to survive until retirement. You were born to burn, to feel the wind on your face and say yes to the terrifying freedom of being fully alive. To make art, even if no one watches. To write words that tremble with truth. To walk away from applause and into the unknown because your integrity matters more than your image. This world trains you to be a consumer of experiences. But your soul was built to generate meaning. And meaning doesn't come from what you buy or what you earn. It comes from what you live, what you choose in the silence, what you stand for when no one's watching, what you're willing to lose in order to remain real. Camus said, "The only way to deal with an unfree world is to become so absolutely free that your very existence is an act of rebellion. That is your calling. Not to escape life, but to infuse it with something the system cannot touch. Presence, purpose, fire. And here's the secret they never told you. You don't need to be wealthy to be free. You don't need to be famous to be fulfilled. You don't need to be perfect to be powerful. You only need to stop lying to yourself. Stop pretending you're okay with dying in a suit you hate. Stop pretending burnout is noble. Stop pretending your dream can wait until you're 50. It can't. The clock is ticking, but not the way you think. Not toward retirement, not toward a pension, but toward the question that will one day sit on your chest as you breathe your last breath. Did I live, or did I perform the idea of a life? And when that moment comes, you don't want to realize too late that your prison was never locked, that you stayed because it was familiar, that you obeyed because it was safe, that you forgot you were free. So listen closely. You were not born to work, pay bills, and die. You were born to wake up, to remember, to choose. And once you do, there is no going back.